What up, you guys? Wolf said the engineer is here, and this is... Well, I have no idea what's this. I didn't name it yet. So please let me know in the comment below what should we name this. So basically, I'm starting up a new series which will explain the future of aircraft or the current reality of aircraft. I was searching recently and I found out that we have no idea when we will go supersonic or hypersonic for that example. So there is several of issues. If a commercial airline want to go supersonic or even worse hypersonic, there is a lot of things into consideration. Right now, the only thing you find over the internet is sonic boom and ozone blah blah blah. But the actual problem is we have no engine to reach a supersonic velocity or even worse hypersonic velocity. An example is here. So I built basically this airline and this is a test bench. So we're using a standard static turbofan engine, more likely an afterburner turbofan engine, a jet engine or turbojet engine, and the J58 which was used on the Blackbird. This is a combination of ramjet and turbojet, and here in the end we got a ramjet engine. So let's send this bird up and I'll explain on the way. Okay, so there goes our craft. It's important to notice that I'm using advanced jet engine, by the way, and realism overhaul Ferrum Aerospace program to make this as real as possible. Now on ground level I've put the throttle to 5%, so if we check the static turbofan jet engine, it's now warming up and giving us approximately 7 to 8 kiloton of thrust. The turbofan, let's call it an afterburner, is giving us a little bit less at ground level with a speed of 0. The turbojet engine, on the other hand, is performing 16 kiloton of thrust. The J58 is also, at this moment, it's a turbo ramjet engine. So it's giving us 20, and the ramjet engine, it doesn't work because a ramjet engine to work it need to be at least 0.3 Mach. So let's start accelerating a little bit, warming up the engine, and send this bird to fly and see how would the engine perform. Now, whoa, oops, my bad, take two. All right, so we got it again. Now all engine is being activated, full throttle ahead. So as you can see, the engine needs more time, an advanced jet engine, because it's realistic. It needs to heat up and start burning some air in turn until it's activated specifically for the turbofan engine. On the other end, the turbojet engine, of course, it can burn fuel directly and ramp up very quickly. This plane is rather heavy and huge, but I'm using Ferrum Aerospace, so it should take off rather easily. So, can it take off? Not really. Let me take this bird up and I'll explain. As you can see, the ramjet engine has been activated. It's minus thrust until it ramp up a little bit. And now we are reaching the end of the runway. Would this take off? Well, it does. I designed it after all. So at the speed of 200, as you can see, the ramjet engine is not providing much of thrust. It's just 4 kiloton, but this is just a Kickstarter. Honestly, I have no idea how to build this, so I created this as a test bench. Now, if we look at the turbofan jet engine, it's consuming a little less fuel than any other, but doesn't provide a good thrust. And the turbofan afterburner is providing us 100 kiloton. The turbojet is providing us 108. The J58 is providing us 160. The reason for that is now we have a speed of almost Mach 1 at sea level, let's call it. And there goes the ramjet engine. The ramjet engine doesn't perform or outperform anything at this moment. Now what does this tell us is, to make a supersonic aircraft, or even better, a hypersonic aircraft, we will need to use a combination of turbo ramjet engine for takeoff and acceleration, and then ramjet engine for cruising speed. The reason we will use a ramjet engine for cruising is the fuel consumption. If we will right now it's providing us 12 kiloton of thrust and using only 1.5 kilogram per second. On the other end, the turbo ramjet engine is providing us 100 but spending 4.5 kilogram of thrust. So to make this thing work, we need to use a combination that's gonna take off the airplane from the speed of 0, accelerate it to at least Mach 1 before the ramjet engine kicks in and start acceleration. And we have another problem, which is the sonic boom. Again, in real life, this is a big problem because the sonic boom is very loud, and let's just say your neighbor wouldn't appreciate you blowing up over their head. So one of the solutions that has been suggested by NASA is to put the engine above the wings in a way that it does not gonna affect, it's gonna redirect the shock wave upward rather than downward, so the sound would go up instead of down. And now let's retrofit this airplane into fitting that issue. Alright there folks, so I fixed up the issue with the engine. I'm using now 3 turbojet engine and 2 ramjet engine. I have reduced the wing 2 steps below the engine. So right now basically the engine is above the wingspan. We need also to actually bring them forward. So 1, 2. Alright folks, there we are on the runway. An important thing that I did forget to mention is at a hypersonic velocity you need radiator. Well, in real life you don't need to, but there is a problem which is overheating. In hypersonic velocity, the particle would condense very fast that the friction would cause the airplane to heat or overheat. It depends on, well, your speed. In real life, one of the solutions is to use titanium plates to protect the body of the airplane. Well, in Kerbal Space Program, just slap on fuel radiator and everything will be alright. So my target now is to reach a hypersonic velocity at least above 1000 meters per second. Now I've replaced the engine. We have 2 ramjet engine, 3 turbojet engine. We are having at least 600 kiloton of thrust, spending, well, a lot of fuel. Okay, so the ramjet engine started kicking in. We reached the 150 meters per second, 130 meters per second. V1, please take off. Take off. Okay, we don't have enough lift. Come on, lad. Please take off. We are reaching almost 180, 185, and we have a lift off. Okay, so the design did work so fast. Now, the question would be, would it actually accelerate beyond Mach 1? One of the actual issue that airplane does have, again, as we mentioned, is would the airplane accelerate beyond Mach 1? Because that acceleration is very important, so the ramjet engine would kick in. And with the exception of Blackbird, the Blackbird does accelerate to Mach 1 rather easy. However, it spends a hell load of fuel doing so. Right now we are spending, let's see, we are spending 40 kilogram or 40 liter per second of kerosene liquid fuel. So would this be enough for us to reach, well actually we reached Mach 1. Let me get Ferrum Aerospace here and see what's our speed. So based on our current altitude and atmosphere density, we are at 0.77 of a Mach. So next goal is to accelerate at least, let's say, 40 kilometers. I don't think we would reach the 40 kilometer barrier, but I want to accelerate as fast as possible, and then let's see would this make it. So I'll see you then. Okay, so as I see, we pretty much reached the maximum altitude for the turbojet engine, or the well, all the engines, to be honest. Now we are not producing much of thrust to accelerate beyond 300 meters per second, which is at this point is almost Mach 1. Now to actually reach our goal, we still need more engines. So solution is, well, let's add another 2 engine to give us a little bit of a push, and I got the best place for those engine. So back to the drawing board. Okay, so toward the road of perfection, I have adjusted the airplane a little bit. I decided to give the J58 a chance because it will outperform both engine at the same time. The J58, which again was used on the Blackbird, is a turbo ramjet engine and a scramjet engine at the same time. Now, it doesn't require a lot of air or air intake. However, it requires a lot of fuel, especially before Mach 1. After Mach 1, it will be more or less reasonable. I've added a few wing strake to make sure the flight will be stable. As usual, I adjusted the last bit of the wing to be upward a little bit to provide more stability. So, place your bets, we're gonna take it for a ride. Okay, moment of truth, part 3. Activated the engine. We are spending, well, it's hard to tell as the engine is still ramping up, but apparently we are spending a lot of fuel as these jet engine or turbo ramjet engine have a very combustion rate and they would provide the most thrust. As you can see, we are already at 125, 130, and these are merely 100, so we are accelerating rapidly and very fast. We have reached 100 meters per second. The ramjet kicked in, and there we go. All right, so we are spending right now around 70 liter per second, 150 meters per second, 180 meters per second, and liftoff. Okay, so apparently the idea did work. We have accelerated rather fast and rather very good. Question is, again, would we break the Mach barrier? So pretty much I'm flying this manually, which is a little bit annoying. The turbo ramjet engine is providing us with 160 kiloton of thrust with a combustion rate of 7. The turbojet engine is providing us a little bit less, which is 100 kiloton, spending a lot of fuel compared to the turbo ramjet engine, and have a combustion rate of 8. Well, actually this is spending more fuel, but obviously it's providing us with more thrust. The specific impulse is much better here. And now let's go with the Mach barrier. So Ferrum Aerospace, we are 0.85 of Mach. Let's go on a stable flight, 10-degree pitching up. And Mach 1. Yes, so we are almost at Mach 1. We are actually reaching Mach 1. Come on, you can do it. Okay, so we're gonna remove the GUI. We are at Mach 1.20. Now the ramjet engine started kicking in. We are having 10 kiloton of thrust and it's going upward. So let me go on a cruising altitude and accelerate it to see if this design would actually work. Alright, so toward the road of perfection, as you can see, we have reached 14 kilometers above the ground, which is above any airliner with flew. And we are actually flying at Mach 1.5, I believe. We are at almost Mach 0.5, and as you can see, we are actually ramping up. The turbo ramjet engine is losing a little bit of thrust, but it's getting compensated by the ramjet engine. And once we reach at least Mach 2 or Mach 3, those engine would provide us with more than we need of thrust. And right now we are still climbing up, as you can see, 15 kilometers, and the acceleration keep going. Question B, would our fuel be enough? Well, to be honest, we are spending quarter of what we used upon takeoff, because right now we have a better combustion. As you can see, the combustion ratio is 7.7 and the ramjet engine has almost 9. Of course, I'm not gonna talk about the ramjet engine because it has a direct combustion. The air is coming in and directly transferred into the combustion chamber, or let's say the afterburner, and burning the fuel right away. But at this speed and this altitude, the specific impulse is obviously very low. If we will look at the other engine, like the turbo ramjet engine, it has a rather higher specific impulse, and even better is the J58. It has almost 2800 as a specific impulse, which means we are getting more thrust toward our puck. So we're spending less fuel, getting more thrust, and again we are still accelerating. So we reached now 1.55 of a Mach. Again, we are still climbing up and we are still accelerating. So it's been okay. Well, this is wrong because I actually speed up the time until the next morning, but I guess we are almost 10 minutes in the flight, and yeah, we're actually doing well. So the road towards perfection, does it work? One of the things that I noticed, which it was an OP mistake, is the design is not very sleek for a hypersonic craft. Those two wings are having the vortex effect and causing a lot of drag. Obviously the angle of attack is very high because we are not reaching a very high speed. And well, the whole shape of the airplane is definitely not what it is. And it's important to notice, I forgot to mention, this cockpit is actually 4 meter. Each of those compartments are 4 meter because again, I'm using realism overhaul, real fuel and everything. So it's a lot heavier than the stock airplane. I forgot actually to remove all the stuff that we don't need. It's a lot heavier than the stock airplane, and therefore it requires more engine, but it's very close to reality. So this will be almost at the size of an Airbus, and the weight of it will be almost the size of the Airbus, as much as the cockpit weight. I think it's 15 ton-ish, I forgot. But yeah, so 450 meter per second, and I think now it's a good time to pitch down a little bit and start the acceleration. What do you think, guys? Well, I'm gonna wait for a little bit more. Once we start losing speed, well, we are actually losing speed now. Alright, so moment of truth, time to pitch down a little bit, accelerate at least to 600 meter per second, and then once this ramjet, the ramjet engine kicks in very strongly, we are gonna pull up into a cruising speed above Mach 3. Hopefully this time I will achieve the goal. As you can see, the plane is a little bit shaking left and right, up and down, because the wings in the back is not in line with the airplane, and obviously the cockpit shape and the cargo bay shape is again not the best for a hypersonic speed. So we are reaching now 500 meter per second, almost at Mach 2. The scramjet engine started kicking in. Right, it's time to pull up from this dive. And come on. As you can see, we're still accelerating because, come on, we are having high dynamic pressure. We have 2 Gs and we are going a little bit to the left. Okay, so we have recovered from the dive. We reached the speed of 580 meter, but the plane is more or less out of control, to be honest. Come on. Alright, so we've made it. Based on this, every time I dive, we will actually gain more thrust, and then the ramjet engine would, well, go crazy. Only problem is this plane is not going straight because we need more stabilizers, specifically at the back of the airplane, something to prevent this from yawing left and right. As you can see, the air pressure is pushing the plane to the right, and now we are going to enter a flat spin. If we continue on this, we are still gaining more speed, and the airplane now is going out of control. Flat spin. Yep. Alright, so we got a side sleep. Clumsy. one of the things that I also forgot to mention in regard for supersonic or hypersonic, you need a lot of stabilizer, especially at the back of the airplane, to make sure that the airplane would go straight forward. Otherwise, what have just happened would happen to any aircraft. And I can tell you, for a commercial airliner, that's a PR nightmare. So back to the drawing board, type 3. Right, so take 3. I have added 2 huge tail fins. I'm using those only for yawing. Those are being tuned to be also for yawing. I've added 4 wing stake and I changed the engine here. So I replaced the turbojet engine with the J58 as it was more efficient and faster. Question B, however, if the air intake would be enough for all the engine. So what I want to do is to add, let's call this, what they are? Oh, they changed the name of those. Adjustable ramp intake. Interesting indeed. So I'm going to add these just below the cockpit here, and another 2 would again be just here. Perfect. All right, now we are gonna give it a go again. I believe we do have enough air intake at ground level and at hypersonic velocity. We got enough wing surfaces to keep the plane in place. Well, let's roll. All right, take 3. We got Bilgan Kerman, who seems to be a little bit worried. Are you all right there, mate? He doesn't seem very comfortable about this, but he knows that we are actually going to survive this time. So we have added an extra 2 engine, and I hope we do have enough intake. The ramjet engine kicked in, and we actually have very good thrust to weight ratio. Matter of fact, we have enough intakes, or more than enough intake for all of this. So we are reaching 180, pulling up 200 meters per second, and we are shift the lift off. All right, so I will see you once we reach our cruising speed, folks. All right, so welcome back, folks. As you can see, we are spending 22 liter of thrust of kerosene, liquid fuel. I have no idea whether this is a kilogram or a liter. If somebody knows, please let me know in the comment below. So as you can see, we have reached our cruising altitude, which is more than before, and it's time to pull down a little bit. Whoa, chill. All right, so we are now going to accelerate up to Mach 3 as we agreed before. We are reaching Mach 1.1. The engine is pulling out more thrust. The ramjet engine is doing iffy, but we are having a better or a higher specific impulse for all the engine as we are going faster. So 1.3 of a Mach, and to be honest, we are not able to pull out from this dive. I'm guessing I'm gonna use these to help us pitch up a little bit. Yep. So basically those are working as an air brake at the moment. Yeah, with a little bit of deflection, they are working as an air brake, and we pulled up from this dive. Now we are going at 400 meters per second, and we are accelerating. So Mach 1.4. We are at a supersonic velocity. Question B, would we actually reach a hypersonic velocity? The hypersonic velocity is Mach 5 plus, meaning we need at least another 500 kiloton of thrust to compensate for our drag. As you can see, our thrust to weight ratio is hangling on 50, or sorry, 0.50, and our thrust to drag ratio is, well, it's acceptable, to be honest. I mean, we're not having a lot of drag, we are having more thrust than a drag, so we are able to accelerate more and more. As you can see, we reached 1.6, so I'm gonna accelerate a little bit more, and I'll see you guys then. Okay, folks, so as you can see, we have reached the speed which we kind of spinned out earlier. Our thrust to drag ratio is still 1.60, which is great. We are accelerating even further, and some of our engines start overheating. Alright, so as it seems, those engines reached their maximum capacity. They are almost overheating. We might need to turn them off once we reached our optimum speed for the ramjet engine. So right now the ramjet engine is ramping up and it's gaining more thrust and more specific impulse. We are basically going faster, spending, well, more fuel at the moment, because these engines are sucking the fuel out of the airplane, and this engine is doing the same. So the combustion ratio has dropped dramatically, but the ramjet engine started kicking in. So once we reach Mach 3, we might need to turn down the throttle for those engine and then keep on going with the rest of the flight. The flight is right now having a high aerodynamic pressure, but we are almost at a Mach 3 speed, which is giving us again more thrust to drag ratio. We are still climbing. We are flying at 17 kilometers above the ground, which I believe, how many meters is that? How many feet is that? Well, I would just assume that this is the highest airplane ever. Okay, so we are reaching Mach 3.2. Our engine is overheating dramatically. We are, well, it's gonna explode. And it just did. So we are now spending less fuel, and, well, it killed the dead weight, to be honest. That's an extra bonus. I wouldn't even know what to do, even if I intended that. So this ramjet engine is kicked in. Now we are having 33 thrust, 33 kiloton, and we are at Mach 3.2. We are still accelerating. As you can see, our drag to thrust ratio is 1.1. Now this is not the best, but once it reached 1, which is a stable cruising flight, we could again dive down a little bit and gain more thrust or more speed using the gravity, or, you know, going down to ramp up the ramjet engine. And once it's kicked in, it can provide us up to 700 kiloton of thrust. With that speed taken into consideration, with the current fuel capacity we got, we could just run half Kerbin. Oh, look at that. The beautiful Earth. I'm using also trajectory, so it kind of can tell us where are we gonna be, or where are we going. Okay, so thrust to drag is almost equal, which means we are not gonna accelerate anymore, and this is our cruising speed. Now I am happy with the result because we have reached Mach 3.2, which is, well, almost as fast as the Blackbird and faster than any commercial airliner could ever go. And again, I used this shape and this to represent how heavy and how real this could be. The size of this airplane is just like any Airbus. It's actually heavier, especially with the fact we got hell load of engine. And again, this is a 4-meter diameter, so this is great. As you can see now, we are losing a little bit of speed, and it's time to put in a small dive to let those engine kicks in, and let's roll it. Alright, so we are diving down now. We are not gonna gain any altitude, but we are gonna use this dive to have a better say. Whoa. Alright, so it's a little bit hard to control this potato flight, and I just want to reach Mach 5 before we burn down or burn out. So would it work? We're having a high dynamic pressure. The tail fin should be able to hold us in place. Question again, would we break the Mach 5 barrier? So engine seems to be working well. We are having a lot of thrust. We are burning up rather quickly. 3.5 of a Mach. The ramjet engine did really kicked in, and we are reaching 80 kiloton of thrust right now. I'm guessing it's a good time to pull out from this dive, but I literally can't. The angle of attack is very high. We are unable to pull off. Okay, that was crazy. Whew. So we pulled up rather crazily, but we did cover up some speed, so I'm gonna give it another go and I'll catch you guys later. Okay, so analyzing all the data that I have been gathering for a while, as it appears, realism overhaul and specifically advanced jet engine and Ferrum aerospace program are very accurate in physics. Now we are flying at a lower altitude right now, which means we have more air density, and well, we don't really need much of combustion rate because the air is already dense. So we are actually having a better thrust to weight ratio and thrust to drag ratio than we had when we were almost 20 kilometers up. So we're reaching now the speed of Mach 5. Our ramjet engine is providing us with 140 kiloton of thrust. The turbo ramjet engine is almost providing us the same, but it's gonna blow up shortly, which is again a good thing because we will get rid of all of that dead weight. Okay, so we got rid of all that dead weight, but as it seems we are losing speed. Well, to be honest, and to give NASA and Airbus and Boeing some credit, as it seems based on today's technology, regardless how this is, with a normal jet engine or a combination of ramjet engine or any type of jet engine, to achieve a hypersonic velocity is impossible indeed, especially for an airliner. As usual guys, thank you so much for watching, and if you liked today's video, don't forget to hit that like button. Thank you so much, and until next time, stay tuned.